Welcome to the Introspective Collective podcast. Today's topic is Fidelity Realistic? Listeners, this is a loaded topic. Preston, you want to start us off?
I sure will. Infidelity, is it realistic today? As we know, historically, fidelity or infidelity has always been with us. When we think about infidelity, typically we think about the man being unfaithful. But as we know, women are also, there are times when they are not faithful as well. When you think about why people aren't monogamous or faithful in relationships, whether it be a marriage, whether it be a committed relationship by intention, we have to take a look at how you were raised. You know, who raised you? What kind of environment did you grow up in? I mean, I know for men, and I can speak for myself and some others that I've talked to, you know, we kind of got a lot about relationships from, older men that we talk to. You know, some men when you were growing up, they would tell you, hey, young man, get as much as you can, as long as you can. Because when you get older, everything slows down, you
Mm.
know, or, there might be conversations where men felt like if I'm being a good provider and I'm paying the bills and I'm taking care of things at home, why can't I get a little on the side?
Mm.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
You know,
that's prevalent
and,
too.
and I don't mean to cut you off, Preston, but I've heard that from someone. I won't put them out there, but it was like, an older person was like, well, as long as they take care of home. And I'm thinking, huh?
right. And here's the thing. That person could think that they're in a committed relationship, right? Because in their mind, and I know a lot of men think like this, my wife, as long as she's faithful or as long as she's not stepping out on me and I'm doing what I'm supposed to at home, even if I dibble and dabble a little bit, I'm in a committed relationship,
Hmm.
you know? So again, I kind of go back to those early impressions, the things that we see, the things that are said in our circle while we're growing up are very impressionable. So then we move into our adulthood. And you would assume everyone understands what a committed relationship is, but you have to define that, right? And that's
True.
two people uh physically and emotionally committed and plugged into one another, right? So that has to be stated, that has to be said. And then you move into, well, people need to understand themselves, right? People have needs in relationships. So I need to know what my needs are. I need to know what my mate's needs are. And we need to know what each other's needs are in a relationship, right?
True.
Because that becomes the entry point to having a healthy, committed relationship. You know, when we enter into relationships, generally things are good from the beginning, and the relationship is spicy, and we're doing all the things that make each other happy. But a lot of times as time goes on, life gets routine, things get mundane.
Mm-hmm.
um and I always say, in a relationship, you're either building up your relationship or it's breaking down. You're either adding to your relationship or you're taking away from it. And I say that because a lot of times when you feel like you've arrived in your relationship or it's all good, people get lazy.
Mm.
Mm.
And
Mm.
people get
Lazy or
lazy.
or comfortable or
Yes.
unintentionally taking things for granted. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and if I could kind of just jump in with this, like, we talk about complacent, right?
Yes.
Complacency, you said comfortable. Um, I want to borrow a page from a national personality. He talks about when you and your mate have decided to be exclusive, do you still need to work for their attention? So, I mean, that's a different topic, but kind of following into what you were just saying.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know,
So,
because sorry, just one last, because I remember my grandmother used to say, well, what you did to get them, you need to do that and more to keep them.
yes, yes. And relationships are work. Let's face it, you have to work at them, and once you kind of understand each other's needs and wants. I mean, people have a variety of different needs and wants in a relationship. I mean, for some people, financial security um helps them to feel comfortable in that relationship. If the funds ain't right, there used to be a saying, romance with no finance is a nuisance.
I remember that.
Right. And I cleaned it up a little bit, but for some people, if the funds aren't right, the anxiety is up and they're not comfortable. I mean, other people, they need FaceTime. They need a certain amount of time with their mate, plugged in, walks in the park, date nights and things of that nature in order to stay plugged in, so understanding that you're right. We can't get complacent in a relationship, because what that does is, like I said, you're either adding or subtracting in your interactions with a person in your relationship. And when you stop doing the things that are the positives, well, now you create an entry point for vulnerability. And when people's needs aren't being met in a relationship, it weakens the relationship. It creates a vulnerability. And so for men, and I'll speak on the man side. Of course, this can apply to women as well. But, sometimes you have people are at different places in their maturity in life, right?
True.
Some people are rather immature. Sometimes that's age, sometimes that's experience, but immaturity can be a reason for infidelity, right?
True.
True.
At the same time, a man can be insecure in himself.
True.
There are some men that are insecure in themselves, and as a result, they feel like ego wise, the only way to boost themselves up is to step out and cheat, because that kind of falsely boosts them up and makes them feel good in a minute. Sometimes men have almost like an imposter syndrome with their mate. If they feel like really their mate, they married or they're dating someone who is dating above where they are, if I could say it that way. I don't have the perfect term, but like they're dating above what they're used to or what they think they're worthy of. Some men are insecure in that. As a result, sometimes the behaviors show up in jealousy. you know Sometimes it shows up in, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna step out and I'm gonna go cheat. you know um you know um age. I'm gonna throw something else out there. And I know this, I'm a man of a certain age. I know that men lose 2% of their testosterone each year after 30. And men get into middle age and they're not as potent as they used to be. Facts. Things start to slow down. Things don't uh, get as long or as strong or last as long as it used to. I'm just keeping it real.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt you, so let me know when you finish, because I have a question about that. Okay, and I don't want to take us off course, but I just have a question.
So I'm just keeping it real. So I know that it can be an insecurity for a lot of men, and a lot of men, of course, don't want to talk about it, and generally don't have spaces to talk about it. So sometimes they try to figure out, is it me? Is it her? Well, let me step out here and see if I still got it, things of that nature. So sometimes our thinking can get distorted and we use unhealthy methods in order to, try to confirm or try to figure out, why we aren't performing like we used to,
Okay.
So, that's another reason that, men step out sometimes. I'll let you go, Des. You wanted to jump in there with a question.
A question, and so when you said that, when we look at age and performance, and I know other people may have popped up in their minds, maybe not, but then it doesn't quite make sense. Then why would they now, like you said, need an ego stroke? But they tend, not all men, but a lot of men now tend to want to pursue younger women. So that almost doesn't quite jive.
Yeah, well, it's a couple things that's working right there. I think that the idea of an older man being with a younger man, for a lot of men, mentally that's an ego stroke, right?
Mm.
Okay.
And right.
Okay, but
And
that's the same for cougars, women of a certain age.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
It's the energy sometimes. So, okay.
We all have egos. We all have egos,
But
right?
the piece that I was trying to drill down on is when you said, okay, men, their performance may not be as same as it was when they was younger. So
Right.
older women may be a little more patient and understanding of that, but yet you're going to seek out a younger woman that's looking for someone to have, I'm trying to be appropriate here, but have, the stamina or whatever to keep up with her. So it's almost like that doesn't quite jive. And I don't want to take us off course, but that's what popped in my mind when you said that. It's
Well, it's
like,
a good point. It's a good point. Some men are a legend in their own minds, right? And so
yeah.
they
Okay, thank you for saying that. Okay.
right. So they
Yes,
have this
thank you for saying it.
right. So they have this idea that being with a younger woman is going to help them find the fountain of youth, right? And oftentimes that's not the case, right?
Right.
Now, I will say the invention of this blue pill has changed the game around a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So from a health standpoint, and I'm serious here, from a health standpoint, if a man, for example, is experiencing some of these issues of not being as potent, all seriousness, going to your PCP and having a discussion about it, looking at your overall health, because there can be different reasons why that's
Yes,
occurring.
absolutely.
But as we age, in general, that's going to happen to all men to some degree or another. Those are just facts, right?
Okay.
So yes, Desiree, were you going to say something?
Well, I think Paula wanted to say something, so I'll
Okay.
pass it off to her.
So, I kind of want to hit on some points that you were making. And, Preston, it is interesting. We do need to understand that infidelity is on both sides of the fence, if we want to be honest and fair. And, from a male perspective, as you're sharing with us, I think a lot about what you said. If I could just kind of go back from your points from beginning, not taking too long, let's also be honest, even depending on what book you read, talking about for those who have faith-based beliefs.
Yeah.
We know that even through antiquity, the king, a man, could have a wife, but he was allowed to have other wives.
This is true.
Okay. So, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I'm just kind of identifying that. And we also need to understand, and I know we have fact checkers in our audience, so don't shout me down if I get this wrong. I think it was either the 3rd or the 5th century, it could have been a little later, where marriage became an institution.
Give us that history.
For the reason of addressing lineage. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about, the idea of marriage in the context of fidelity, infidelity, we know there were harsher rules for women who stepped out or were caught in infidelity than there were for men, right?
That's a fact.
So, right. So then let's just kind of move forward. I don't want to dwell too long on that. I also think about, like you said, messages growing up. I used to, I was raised in a family where my grandmother had she had 5 boys and 2 girls. And, so I always would hear, take your time before you settle down, go have some fun. But I didn't hear girls being told, go have some fun, but that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
But, right,
Yes,
Des? We all
Yeah.
heard our older brothers and uncles being told, look, why you settling down so soon? Go have some fun. Not that I'm disagreeing with that, because I want our young people, to go and experience life before being tied down with, a mortgage, car payment, go
yes.
have some fun. What did King Jaffe say? Go sow your royal oats. I'm not
Joffy
saying
Joe
be
Fur.
I was
Jaffe
thinking
Joe
that.
Fur. Right. But don't be irresponsible. Use protection,
True.
don't and like, that's fine too. So now I want to kind of come to present when we're talking about fidelity. Let's be for real. Even though people are getting their hair up about polyamorous relationships, well, let's be
Yes.
for real. If you were cheating, you were already buying into the poly. We just have a word for it, but you weren't being honest about it,
True.
right?
You weren't being transparent. Right.
True.
That's right. So, now there is more, how do I say, acceptance of poly relationships. Then we
Yes.
also are moving into what's called ethically non-monogamous
Yeah.
relationships. And so, I think if we want to be honest about this, it starts with communication. It starts with being transparent. Like I think one of you said, we all have different viewpoints of what does a committed relationship look like. What do you need in a relationship? What do you want from a relationship? But I think it starts with communication. So I think I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a couple of things. So going back to some of the comments that Preston made about, came to mind was realistic expectations. When you talk about, of course, the novelty, the thrill, we call it the honeymoon period, infatuation, whatever you want to call it in the beginning, right? Because it's that newness and it's that escape and we're in fantasy land, okay?
Yes.
But eventually, like you said, you come to now what is the norm of the relationship and the couple and having realistic expectations. And this is part of what Paula just stated too. And I've taught my sons this, and hopefully they apply this in their relationships, but be honest, let people make informed decisions. If you're a non-monogamous person, then you really need to think about, are you trying to commit to a monogamous relationship when that's not your nature? So you're setting yourself up and that individual up for failure or having unrealistic expectations if you're not being totally transparent and allowing that person the opportunity to choose. Because I think where infidelity is hurtful is because one person is thinking I'm in a committed monogamous relationship, and like Paula shared, but yet the other person is being poly, and you're not on the same page because the person has not been given the opportunity. And as I explained to my sons, it's like, you know what? You never know what people are into. If you don't have a conversation about it, you might be pleasantly surprised. And if that's not her thing, then you're allowing her to the opportunity to choose. And also to reiterate what Paula stated, then practicing safe sex, because if you're non-monogamous and this person is thinking that he or she is monogamous, that is unfair to them. So allow them the opportunity to be able to protect their bodies. And then I'll kind of wrap up with saying all new relationships become old. Hence, if we want to have longevity in a relationship for those that are married 40, 50 years, then at some point, like you said, you have to be realistic. People say they want to be in a stable relationship, then what comes with stability is not going to be all this spice all of the time, but you recognize when things are getting a little mundane that yes, you should kind of spice it up. And that goes to both parties, because sometimes people say, well, he's no longer romantic, so why should I? Or she doesn't, wear, lingerie like she used to, so why should I be romantic? Each person is responsible for his or herself and what they are bringing to the relationship. And I'll just kind of wrap up with open, honest communication, realistic expectations. And as I think we all stated, relationships require a certain amount of work, and there's no way around that. You work to get in it or to win that person over. So why don't you want to, as we all stated, continue to do the same things that you did in the beginning so that you can keep the spice going as you continue on and hopefully have a lasting relationship. So that's all that I need to say.
All right. I did have another thought. How's our time?
Go ahead, Preston.
You just made me think that we've always lived in a patriarchal society, and it's always been a double standard in terms of what men do and conduct themselves and how women conduct themselves. I've heard an older woman say, a man, he can, you could pick him up out of the gutter and he can be drunk and out all night and pick him up out of the gutter and dust him off and he'll be received by the family. But a woman can't do the same thing.
True.
It's just viewed differently.
Yeah.
But I have another question. When you talked about the polyamorous relationship, which is, maybe they've always been here, but they've been more pronounced, or you hear more about it, I would say, in more recent years, let's say the past 5 years. What do you think about the numbers of men and women? Do you think that all contributes to infidelity? Some would say that there are many more women than there are men, many more available women than there are men. And because there's not as many male counterparts, let's say in the African American community or BIPOC community, that it lends to men cheating more. You think there's any validity to that?
Well, I think anyone can justify whatever reason they want for cheating.
True.
We understand that birth rates and, Des, remember we did that big project, birth rates start equal, but then around 18 to 24 years of age, and we see this playing out sadly today, we lose many of our young men. And so by the time people are in their 30s or 40s, there may appear to be a lack of available men, or what was the quote once, 7-1 women to men. I don't particularly buy that, because I just feel, and this is my opinion, I feel that, if you want to be the righteous man or lover for your partner, then why do you feel you need to go outside of the relationship? Okay.
I agree.
But then I also accept that, and this goes for men and women, but we're just using the issue of the availability of men to women. There are certain women who believe I have no problem sharing my man. What was that song that came out? I have him on the weekend, you have him for 9 to 5. I mean, again, that's a polyamorous principle. And there are some people who do espouse why not share a man if he's a good man? And you know what, we know what the LD folks would do, sister wives. I mean, I think it starts with an honest, transparent communication. And so that's my thought.
I don't care about the other girls. Just be good to me.
Oh, you going back, Preston?
Oh,
Okay.
okay. And I'm gonna make one last comment, and then we can wrap up. But I'm going to say, someone had said this to me. Two things, right? One was, Desiree, just work with my program, because no matter who you with, all men cheat. That's one. Second is, you know what, Desiree? This is a different person. You know what, Desiree? Well, you know what? Your counterparts, speaking to women willing to share, if women did not allow men to cheat with them, then men would have no choice but to conform to monogamy if no one would entertain them. So just a thought for the day as we wrap up.
I think we can close out on that note.
You're right about that.
Well, we thank everyone for listening. Please tune into our weekly episodes, the IRC Introspective Collective, and please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for listening.